This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 3 of effective copywriting. So we're at the halfway point. You turned in your sketches and your concept ideas and did 3 comps, and the work that I got in by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. has already been graded and sent back. So you have a full week to work on your revisions. So tonight we're going to talk about how to go about tackling the revisions. I'm also going to talk about taglines. Taglines are not headlines. Taglines are something completely different. So this week we're going to do a writing workshop by developing taglines for a nonprofit organization. And I'm also going to talk about doing graduate level research. I'm kind of an expert at it because I've been doing it so long. So I'll take you into the library and show you how to maneuver through there as a refresher course so that you can start thinking about the campaign research paper that's due in week 4 and maybe look for some secondary sources online. But first, I want to talk about what a tagline is. So according to George Felton in our textbook, Advertising Concept and Copy, he says that a tagline or a slogan, some people call it a slogan, in Great Britain they call them strap lines. I've never heard that term used here. But anyway, a tagline is the essence of the campaign or the brand or the product. So when I say something like Nike, you immediately think just do it. So just do it is their tagline. Here are some other taglines that have been time tested, and some of them are still being used, like American Express and Don't Leave Home Without It. Time to Make the Donuts was a really fun campaign done by Dunkin' Donuts before they expanded their menu to go beyond donuts. Magically Delicious is still being used by Lucky Charms today, and I remember that tagline from when I was a kid in the 60s. So when you're constructing taglines, sometimes you want to think about the longevity of them. Other times it might just be for a specific campaign. So the essence of that campaign can be reflected through the tagline. So taglines are, and this is a direct quote out of your Advertising Concept and Copy book, George Felton says, taglines are portable pieces of persuasion, these little chunks of language that people carry around in their head. So when I say Nike, you immediately think just do it. Or Lucky Charms, they're magically delicious. So how do you come up with a tagline? Well, I'll give you some insight into how you can think about constructing taglines for your nonprofit organization. So you can go back to your nonprofit organization's about page. You've already, understand who they are because you created these concepts. Now you want to look at their benefits, not the features. All nonprofits and all products, all services have features, but it's the benefits that separate them from the pack. So what does your nonprofit do that maybe their competition doesn't do? That would be a benefit. So you can choose the best or the strongest benefit and build your tagline around that. You can look at differentiation. So again, what separates your animal charity from the next guy's animal charity? So you can do like a SWOT analysis on your nonprofit organization and examine their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities and threats, and develop the unique selling proposition from that SWOT analysis. You can do what's called leaning it up against something. So this was the example I have here is from the National Pork Board, who jumped on, this was probably like 20 some odd years ago, but Oprah made a big stink about never eating hamburgers again. And she was only going to eat chicken and fish. And the Pork Board jumped on that idea of they're the other white meat. So they leaned up pork against the benefits of chicken and branded themselves as the other white meat. So that's how you lean it up against something. There are creative writing techniques that you can use to help you create your taglines. Parallelism is one where all the sentence elements are identical in thought and should be made identical in grammatical form. And the form and the function should all coincide. So here's an example from the TV show Survivor, which is in its 20th year and it's had 40 seasons, and they still use the tagline outwit, outlast, outplay. And this uses parallelism in a couple of different ways. First, you have alliteration with the 3 O's, outwit, outlast, outplay. You also have the play on the syllabic form, so each word is 2 syllables: outwit, outlast, outplay. So it's got that natural rhythm to it. And it's also in the, I call it the power of 3. Human beings like things in threes, like, think of the stoplight with red, green, and yellow. Everything's in threes. If you start looking around, you'll notice a lot of threes. So using the power of 3 or the Trinity can sometimes help you with a tagline. And be playful with your punctuation. These could have been done with commas, but with the period, they're a little bit more staccato. So it's like outwit, outlast, outplay, giving it more energy. Opposition takes a benefit and plays it up by using the complete opposite. So Purdue Chicken used to have a tagline that said, "It takes a tough man to make a tender chicken." And Frank Purdue was the tough man, but to look at him, he was this scrawny little guy, like standing out in the chickens. But they used that to talk about how tender their chickens were and how it was more tender than the competition's. But instead of saying that, they played off the fact that Frank was a tough man and he makes tender chickens. A really effective way to use a creative writing technique like metaphor or simile, where you're talking about one thing in terms of another. So Chevy trucks uses a simile because they compare themselves to rocks. So Chevy trucks are like a rock. So you can think of something in terms of something else. Taglines should be short and memorable. So don't make them too wordy. So I always say, if it's more than 7 words, it's too long. So the shorter, the better. Remember, you want people to remember them. And then once your product or your service, whoever you develop a tagline for, once it becomes like set in stone, you want to use it on everything. So when the receptionist answers the phone, or you're doing a print ad, or you're doing something on a billboard, or you're updating the website, you want to make sure your tagline is always there because it coincides with your company logo. But what happens if you have a company name that doesn't actually say what the company is? I can think of a children's charity called Kaboom. And if I hadn't started the sentence with a children's charity, you wouldn't have known that Kaboom actually is an organization that helps create educational play for children. So the tagline should be something that's descriptive of what you do if your company name does not tell the reader what it does. So you want to make sure it's unique, and you want to avoid cliches. And it should be true. Remember, it's the soul of your company and it's that essence of the brand. So think about it, how true it can be. Now, this is my piece of advice. I hate the tagline, "Make a difference." It's so overused. Every nonprofit uses it. It was on the side of the Orange County Sheriff cars here in Orlando. It is just old and tired. So I don't want to see any taglines with the words "make a difference" in it. We know your nonprofit wants to make a difference. We get it. They're doing all this great work, but they all do. There's nothing about your charity that's making a difference any differently than the other guy's making a difference. So come up with a new way of saying it. So avoid the 3 words, "make a difference," and be creative. Now we have a bunch of resources for you. The tagline resources include taglineguru.com. That's where you can go learn about taglines some more. He's got some great examples and some tips and tricks there. George Felton in your textbook also has a bunch of ideas about taglines and some examples. And you can go back to the swipe file that you started in week 1 and look to see how the taglines are being used in your swipe file and the ads that you collected. Because what we're going to be doing, let me get to the platform, is this week we are creating taglines for our nonprofit organization. So let me get in here real quick. I should have been prepared and I'm not. Preview. Okay, week 3. All right, so with the tagline assignment this week, you're going to be going into the discussion board and you're going to create 10 taglines for your nonprofit organization. You're going to number them 1 through 10, and under each tagline that you create, that you write, you're going to give a rationale as to why it works. I give you some reading here from Carmine Gallo's book, The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs, because Steve Jobs was really excellent at coming up with those like one-liners that everybody remembered. So I give you some resources down here under the rubric, the lost art of writing the sticky tagline PDF, what is a tagline PDF, and WAG the tagline PDF. These 3 short articles have everything you need in it to help you write your taglines for your organization. So when you start writing your taglines for your organization, when you write your rationales, remember, I want you to quote from these resources that I provided for you right here. So don't just tell me you like this tagline. Go beyond that. Use the research to help support the argument that you're making in your claim about why that tagline works. So you're going to do these 10 taglines by Friday with the 10 rationales and put them up in the discussion board. That's the first thing that you're going to do. Please number them 1 through 10. Put your rationales underneath it. So all 10 taglines should have their rationale, and then post it in the discussion board by Friday at 11:59 p.m. Then by Sunday, you're going to choose 3 taglines of 3 of your classmates. See, I told you, human beings, we love 3s. So you're going to choose 3 of your classmates and you're going to workshop their taglines. When you read all 10 of their taglines, you're going to choose the 3 that you think work and explain why. And then you're going to choose the 3 that are the weakest and explain why they're weak. So you have to do the 10 taglines by Friday and the 3 response posts by Sunday at 11:59 p.m. And there's a whole bunch of helpful hints and extra stuff here. And like I said, Felton's got a lot in the textbook, so make sure you look in the textbook as well. Okay, so that's taglines, and that's what you got going on this week. I want to talk a little bit about the campaign research paper that's due Sunday of week 4. When we get to week 4, you'll see that you're writing a Mastery Journal reflection post about your campaign, and the research paper is also about your campaign. So you've been creating this campaign for your nonprofit. You wrote about voice and tone in week 1. You're developing these concepts and creating this campaign to help your organization raise money. So the research paper for graduate school is a way for you to map out the campaign and how you would go about possibly presenting it to a client. So you want to always think about how you're going to get the client to, purchase your ideas. You want them to pay you to do your campaign, not the other guy. So I have a whole thing here about being creative with paper titles, because I really hate when papers are titled campaign research paper or just research paper. So be creative. I don't think my stuff's up on Academia EDU anymore, so I'm just going to delete that. Too many people were taking my papers, so I took them down. So be creative with your paper title. Include the name of the organization if you want. That's a good place to start. So anyway, with the research paper, you're writing the introduction, and all of this is in the assignment that you have due Sunday of week 4, but I just want to go over it now because I want to show you how to do the research. So your introduction are these 3 bullet points. You're just going to talk about who the organization is, what is their problem, what is it that they want you to solve through the campaigns, usually raise money or raise awareness. And then you're going to develop your thesis. Your thesis statement is the backbone of your paper. It's what you keep circling back to. It's that argument that you are putting forth that the research is backing up. So there's a sample thesis statement on the platform. So if you struggle with writing thesis statements, use that one to help you write your thesis statement. The body of the paper is going to be kind of the meat that's on the bone. So you're going to give specifics about the nonprofit organization. You're going to talk about differentiation and what separates them from the competition. Remember, we looked at competition in week 1 and we developed the psychology of advertising in week 1 in the discussion board. You're going to talk about the target audience, which is what you did for week 2. I'll have those target audience profiles graded tomorrow and back to you. You're going to talk about the voice and tone of the campaign, and then you're going to talk about why the project is important. Then you're going to explore your design solution, because that's really what you're pitching to the client. these are my ideas to help you raise money. So you want to talk about the media that you're producing. You know, you're already producing magazine ads in the form of the testimonial. So you're doing some print advertising, but you can think about other forms of media that you could suggest to the client, like interactive or maybe transmedia storytelling, or doing some public service announcements along the same lines of the campaign that would run for free on TV stations. You want to be specific and you want to use research to back up your claims. So like I said last week, just because you like pink doesn't mean your target audience likes pink. So you're going to use your research to help you support the argument that you're making as to why your campaign would resonate with the target audience that you are talking about. So you want to explore your color schemes, your image and typography choices using the research to back it up. So to get research, first of all, if you haven't gone in the About section of FSO, I highly recommend you go in this week. I have a whole lot of extra resources in there. And there is a PDF called Resources for your research paper. And that is a great place to start your research. I have a really good link to something called colormatters.com, and it's got a whole bunch of insights on how advertising and colors work and how target audiences respond to them and what certain colors do psychologically. So that's all in the About section of FSO in the resources for your research paper. But you also need to go to the library, because you're going to have to use those scholarly databases. You know, this is graduate school. It's all about, you know, contributing to the discourse community. So part of what we're doing here is developing this research paper to eventually help you with a client pitch, because you have to go in before a client. You may have remember this from month 2, but when you've developed the target audience, you have to sell the ad agency or the company owner on why your campaign is the strongest solution to their problem. So you do that by using research to back up your claims, because they might not just take your word for it. But if you can say, for example, the target audience, da 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 da, according to colormatters.com, the psychology behind the color blue states. So you use research to help, you know, support your argument. So we're going to use the scholarly databases in the library, and we're going to find some resources for our nonprofit organization, and we're going to evaluate them, because just because you find it in the library doesn't mean it's going to help answer your research question. So every piece of research you come across, you know, in the back of your mind, say, will this resource help answer my research question? How does this research support the argument that I'm making in my paper? If you answered yes, then you want to make sure that the source of the article that you're using is authoritative. So the author should be an expert, not just an opinion piece. It should be current, and it should support its own information. And that's a really good shortcut to finding other pieces of research. If you find the first one that's really good, go look at their works cited page or their bibliography or references and see what they're using. And then you've got kind of like a trail of breadcrumbs that you can follow. You always want to make sure that the research that you're using, that the author's tone is balanced, and it's not just an opinion piece that's put out there. So questionable resources come from questionable resources, questionable websites, and specifically ones that are trying to sell you something. So those are your .coms. Maybe there's no author attached to the website. They might be using quotes with no citations, or they're not using quotes at all, and they're just making a whole bunch of unsubstantiated claims. Maybe it's old and out of date. So you want to always evaluate your sources through this lens, because for the paper due Sunday of week 4, you need to have 5 to 7 secondary sources. We'll go more in depth with that because you already have most of them. But what I want to do right now is quickly take you into the library. So let me go back here. From your Full Sail 1 page, I always go to Connect, and then I go to Departments, and then I scroll down to the library. Once you get to the library, you know, this is all their stories and the latest stuff. So just click right over to About, and under Quick Links is everything you need. So there is an online book library, there's the research databases, There is LinkedIn Learning and O'Reilly are down here. Learning, so your O'Reilly books are there. O'Reilly is a really great place to look for books on copywriting. There's a whole bunch. I have a whole playlist. If you want it, just email me and I'll send it to you. And LinkedIn Learning has some great how to get started in InDesign. If you're struggling with any of the software, then go to LinkedIn Learning and do some of the tutorials. That's the best way to get up to speed. But for right now, we're going to go into the library research databases. And then this looks different. Okay, EBSCOhost. I like Academic Search Complete, which is EBSCOhost too. So click on that one. It wants me to log in, so let me quickly log in. All right. So now what do we search? Well, you know you're doing an ad campaign for a nonprofit organization. So you can start with the name of your organization. It may come up, it may not. It might show up in like Business Search Premier, which is also part of EBSCOhost. But what you want to do is look for some research beyond your organization, because everything about your organization is on their website and their about page. So let's look for a resource for fundraising techniques. So let's look up nonprofit fundraising. I did not spell it right. It helps if you spell things right. It's late in the day and I don't spell well at the end of the day. So hit search. And I have 128 results. That's a lot to go through. So what I want to do is on the left-hand side of the page over here, we want to look at taking the list down. So you want to make sure, click off scholarly peer-reviewed journals right here. That took it down to 27, so that's good. Peer-reviewed journal articles are always reliable. So you don't have to go through that whole thing about figuring out if they're reliable, because they've been reviewed by the peers and they're in the journal, they're reliable. You also want to look for full text, so make sure that's checked off because you want to easily access the entire article. So here's organizational characteristics associated with fundraising performance of nonprofits, blah, 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 hospitals. That's fine. They might have some things in there. Here's one on art museums. Here's comparing and contrasting fundraising performance for nonprofit hospitals. There's one in Spanish. So you also want to come over here and you want to go under language and put it in English. Come on. Thank you. That's going to eliminate the one. So you can use this left-hand column where it says refine results. You can use this to limit your searches. So it will help narrow the scope of what you're looking for and make it a little easier. So say we want to use this article from the internet, 3 internet fundraising techniques for nonprofit. We see that we have full access, so go ahead and click on the PDF and download it into your computer. But here's a quick way to do the reference. Click on this. And then you're going to come over here and under tools on the right hand side is the cite button. So let's click the cite button. And you see here it comes up with APA along with everything else, MLA, Chicago style, everything else. But we want APA. So right here is what you need for your reference page. So this is what I do. I copy it and I paste it into a Word document right at the top. That way I have my reference. Then as I start to read my article to find like a direct quote that I can use, when I find it, I put it right in that Word document and I put the in-text citation in it. That way I have all my research organized and I have my direct quotes already formatted. So I shared something on the community discussion board today about the easiest way to get a direct quote into Microsoft Word by using the dictation tool. So go check that out. So that's a really easy way to do your library research. So don't be afraid of the library and don't be afraid of research, because research actually helps you win the job in the long run. Okay. So the research paper is not due till Sunday of week 2, but don't leave it Sunday of week 4. So don't leave it till next week. Start looking for some resources this week. Okay. Remember, this is an APA style research paper. So in week 1, I sent you back your paper with all sorts of comments in the margins. So make sure you go back and look at those and you're not making the same mistakes in this final paper. And your references are, that's where you're listing all the resources that you actually refer to in the paper that you've actually cited from. And those are in APA style in alphabetical order. And if the entry runs longer than one line, you indent the second and subsequent lines, and there's no extra space between your entries, okay? So when you're using research, I may have pointed this out to you guys in your week 1 paper. You don't just plop in a quote at the end of a paragraph or start a paragraph with it, or just stick it in the middle of the paragraph with no context. So this is a really good way of helping you meet word count when you're writing a paper that has to be like 1,500 to 2,000 words. If you first introduce a word using an action verb, and then give the author and the title of the article, then you can give us the quote in the next sentence. Then you explain what the quote means and how it supports your argument in the third sentence. So if you have to have 5 secondary sources in your paper, and each of the direct quotes from those 5 sources is 3 sentences, you just wrote 15 sentences right off the bat. So under the about section of FSO is this list of action verbs that actually hangs over my desk at work and my desk at home, so that I'm not always saying, John Smith states, John Smith states, John Smith states. It's too repetitive. So you can look through this list and say maybe John Smith asserts, or John Smith opposes the argument presented by, or John Smith declares this or expresses that. So use these action verbs to help introduce your quote. Don't just plop them in, okay? All right, this is the fun part of the project. This is where you're gonna actually take your comps to the next level and get your client to sign off on them, because you're gonna get them ready to go to the magazine. So in the feedback that I gave you today, I may have challenged you on some things about typography, or maybe there's not enough body copy, or the image looks weird. So I want to show some examples of some revisions actually done by students in my class. Okay, so this is the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, and this student was doing it from the point of view of the mother. So she would be an extreme user, or just plain folks. And I said to the student, I don't know about this ad. I can't get past the bad hat. The hat on the woman is just really awful. Plus, she's standing on a playground with an automatic weapon. I'm like, I understand what you're trying to get through in your messaging, but there's a huge disconnect between what the image that you're showing and the copy that you're writing. So let's rethink this. What is it that you want to do? Well, this mom wants her playgrounds in her neighborhood to be safe for her children to play on. So how can we revise this ad that the messaging coincides with what the mom's actually feeling? Because the mom is not going to go and stand on the playground with an automatic weapon wearing this really awful hat. And if she does, she should, well, anyway, she shouldn't do that. So the student took on the challenge, and this ad changed into this ad, which still gives me chills. So now you can hear the mom's sense of relief. That Coalition to Stop Gun Violence gave her community the tools it needed to make their playground safe. And now she can smile because she knows that her community is going to be safe. So when you're thinking about how to go about these revisions, think about the person that you chose to be the spokesperson for your company, how they would sound, and how they would reflect the messaging of your campaign, which is tied back into the mission statement of what your organization does. Remember, I always tell you, your body copy in your ads should always tell me what they do, tell me why they do it, and tell me why the reader should care. This ad gave me chills because the first ad was just so off base that when I saw how he came back with the revision, it was so good. He just like really nailed the voice and tone of this woman through the copywriting and the way he laid out the ad and everything. So the same thing happened with a second ad that he did where he wanted to use personification. And he had these 2 guns kind of pointed at each other, and he's asking the reader, can you tell who has a mental illness? I'm like, No, but I know the gun on the left is going to shoot off the handle of the gun on the right, but I don't know what that has to do with mental illness. So what are you trying to say? How are you personifying the gun? So we talked a little bit about how the message that he wanted to get was that gun safety goes back to giving gun permits out to begin with. And he wanted to talk about how the application process is more complicated and you really need to be selective. So he wanted to talk about how sometimes the guns get into the wrong hands of the wrong people. So he came back with this ad, and now you're hearing the actual gun and the guilt that it has when it says, you know, what have I done? I am the manifestation of their Second Amendment, yet shrouded in irresponsibility, yada, 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 yada. When will they learn I should be controlled? So he turned around an ad that I kind of understood what he wanted to do with this one, but he was kind of losing. My mouse just died. Come back, thank you. But he kind of like missed the whole point of the personification, and that came through in this ad. Okay. So the other thing we're asking is that you're taking your comps in and creating a cohesively branded campaign. So these ads might look familiar because I used the first ad from Pasadena Humane Society when I did the example of the Settle and Alric discussion board in week 1. So they have a great, consistently branded campaign. All their print ads, you can tell that right away it's Pasadena Humane Society. They always do these cute little images. They use their corporate colors. They have the same typography. They have the same look and feel, the same hierarchy. Another example, this is the Sweet Potato Farmers organization, and they did this whole campaign on the power of orange. And each ad has different messagings about different nutritional values and things about the sweet potato. But again, it's a cohesively branded campaign. So the ads can run in the same publication as just a series in the publication, or you can put them on rotation. If you buy, say, a year's worth of ads for your organization, maybe they rotate one month and they rotate to the second and the third. So each ad runs twice. This one is one of my favorites. This was done by a student, and it is for PAWS, which is the Performing Animal Rights Organization. And he wanted to get across this message that you can adopt an elephant or a tiger or a bear, but without the mess. So I thought that was kind of fun. So when he had some other ads, we talked about, I really liked this idea, and I challenged him to attack this idea from another viewpoint. Let me see if I can make them a little bigger. No, I can't see. What? Okay. So if you look at Adopt an Elephant, it's the kitchen, and the elephant's hiding behind the counter because he left a big pile of poop on the floor. So you can help elephants without having them in your home. So the tiger shredded the couch, the bear tipped over the refrigerator, which I know from personal experience actually happened because my brother-in-law lives in Aspen, and a bear opened up his window in his apartment and went in the kitchen and actually pulled the refrigerator over, took what he wanted, and then left out the same window. So this organization, it was a fun campaign talking about how you can adopt these animals, but without the consequences of having wild animals in your home. This is another cohesively branded campaign for the Center for Eco-Literacy. It's talking about where your food comes from and how this Center for Eco-Literacy helps educate children about where their food comes from. Again, it's got that cohesive look to it on each ad. This is not a nonprofit organization, but I just thought it was fun. It's an ad series that plays off of ideas of fashion in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So they did these photo shoots with these models with that. And it's all about the Seven Sun Clothing Company. And you don't want to still be wearing your old clothes. Instead, you should go to Seven Sun. So it's got a cohesive look to it. So I can see where this ad series would be in one magazine and all 3 ads would be a couple of pages apart or something. So that's kind of what you're looking at doing with your assignments this week. You're going to go tackle those testimonial ads and you're going to revise them as if they were the final proof that the client would see to sign off on to go to the publication. So if I gave you feedback and said, you know, this one's your strongest, or if you really liked your Just Plain Folks ad and you want to do 3 of the same type of ad using 3 different Just Plain Folks spokespeople, that's fine. But what I'm looking for is strong messaging that resonates with the reader, that gets them to respond to that call to action. Don't forget the call to action on the bottoms of your ads. If they don't know how to make it easy for them to give a donation by giving a website or URL or the phone number or QR code, something. Because if you have to rely on the reader reading your magazine ad and then getting up and going to the computer and doing a Google search for your organization, no. But if it says at the bottom of your ad, text, you know, 1234 to 101010, and the $10 donation will be automatically made through your cell phone bill, then that's an easy way for them to respond right then in the moment. Give them the website. Make it easy for them to make that donation. So look at your ads, revise them, get them ready for the next step. You might look at these later on in the program. You never know when you're doing your thesis project. So you want to make sure you're doing your best work in these ad designs. If I gave you some insights on layout and hierarchy and typography, I included some resources for you. If you want me to look at ads before they're due on Sunday, that's fine. Just get them to me before Friday. And if you need some insights, you can talk to me on the phone. You can shoot me a message through the platform. We can do a one-on-one go-to meeting. I want you guys to feel comfortable in what you're doing in this class so that you can take the fundamental skills that you learned about copywriting and brand messaging forward into the next classes with all the concepts that you learned. So what is due this week? Well, the Mastery Learning Project testimonial ad revisions are due on Sunday. Your tagline writing workshop is due on Friday with the reply post on Sunday. And then you have a copywriting knowledge check that opens this week, but it's not due till week 4. And I give you 3 or 4 chances to get them right. So take it. All the questions come directly out of the Felton textbook. So just get into the textbook and look for the answers. It's really easy. You use the search command and you can find anything. So this is a really good way to boost your grade because you get a couple of chances to get them all right. Okay, it's 5% of your grade, so you might want to pay some mind to that textbook. Then, of course, you're going to turn in your 3 concepts from tonight's live session. So what did we talk about? We talked about graduate level research and how to use research to support our arguments put forth in our thesis statement. We talked about cohesively branded campaigns. We talked about taglines. So there were a lot of concepts that I covered in the lecture this week. So this is the busiest week. So be organized. I know sometimes life gets in the way and throws us off, but part of the post that I put up in the community discussion board was not only to tell you an easy way to, you know, dictate your quotes directly into your paper, but was also explaining how I managed to juggle a full-time job. I'm teaching 2 classes here. I'm rewriting courses. I'm working on my PhD and I'm in the dissertation phase now. And I just came out of the comprehensive. It's like always busy. Always busy. My life is always busy. So figuring out those little windows of opportunity that I can, you know, read an article or take some notes or do some writing, it's really important. So if you have any questions about time management or need some help with that, I am your expert on that because I've been doing it for quite a while now. All right. So are there any questions about anything I covered, Ben?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Well, if you start working on this, and you guys that are watching the archive, if you start to work on assignments and you're frustrated or you have a question or you're lost, please reach out to me. I'd rather you ask me 15 questions than try to struggle and get through it without asking questions and being confused. So open up the platform if you haven't already, figure out what you got to do and when you can do it and get started on it now. Don't wait till the weekend. We all have lunch hours, or we have 5 minutes of a day, or we can stop watching Real Housewives of New Jersey, which I will admit is my little weakness, but it's all about balance. So figure out how you can juggle your full-time jobs and your life and your family and school, because this is going by really fast, and each course from here on out is just going to get a little busier and a little bit more intense. So I want you to be prepared. So I've given you a whole bunch of resources to help you with that. Okay, you know where to reach me. You can reach me through the platform, call me on the phone, set up a one-on-one go-to meeting. I am here to help. So let's get through this class together, okay? Good luck with this week's work. And like I said, get started on it sooner rather than later.